Hey there, how you doing?
Fine, thanks, and yourself?
Not bad, not bad. So thanks for coming in. It's a lovely day.
Yeah, well, I mean, lovely by what standards, eh?
But by English standards, not South African
Not
standards.
South African standards, yeah.
So what I wanted to do is really just, because we've been talking for a while,
Yeah,
and you come from a background that's very complementary to what we do here, with
Yeah.
personal training. You come from that physio background. And really what I wanted to give people an opportunity to find out is this kind of why it's so powerful to work with someone like yourself, and how we could work together, and also what they should be really expecting from any relationship with a personal trainer and a physio, so that people really come armed with as much information about how they get the most out of their professionals that they work with. You know, there is a time and a place for the right kind of professional.
absolutely.
And we work with a large client base of varied individuals, all with their own needs. And yes, there are goals that are similar, but they often come from different backgrounds, different ages, different injury histories, different levels of experience. And many of them have seen physiotherapists like yourself before they've come to us.
Sure.
Maybe they've been referred in,
Yeah.
or they're in this kind of state of limbo where they have pre-existing issues, which are they've either believe that they're always going to be there, or they're a little bit worried and they don't know how to try and overcome them. And what I wanted to do today is get a little bit more background about you,
Sure.
because we've spoken many times, and it's been great conversation, and we've kind of had similar thoughts on and approaches to how to get the most out of someone's training and someone's path. And I wanted to kind of dive into commonly asked questions, concerns that people have, and also find out a little bit about you, and what makes you tick, yeah, and why someone should speak to you and hang out with you, and and obviously I can kind of reflect on my own story, my own journey, and how we could potentially work together.
Absolutely.
I'm a personal trainer. I've been doing this for a number of years. I hadn't always been a personal trainer. I'd been working in the corporate world for a while, and before that I'd worked in a media industry which was very much based on drinking and smoking and not taking care of myself.
Everything opposite to what you're doing now.
Everything opposite of what I was doing
Yeah.
now. But then I did work in a bigger environment with offices, with HR departments and everything like that, and scheduled holidays, and 500 people in the building, and it was a very different atmosphere where there was travel, there was deadlines, there was pressure.
High pressure, high stress.
Yeah, and sitting at a desk all day.
Yeah.
And so that most of our clients come from either the professions, or they run their own businesses, or they have families. They're very time poor people, and they're like myself. They wanted to try and make a change. Now I feel pretty blessed of the fact that I've managed to make that change. I'm also pretty geeky about these things, so I like that process of change. And going from being overweight, not taking care of myself, having lots of joint issues, having lots of injuries, and things that really kind of would end up being dead ends on my own journey. I would try my hardest to get fit, and then I would break.
Sure.
So I have a lot of familiarity with the kind of things that you deal with from my own experience.
Sure.
But what made you get into physiotherapy? So where do you currently work?
So currently I'm based at Physio Asian Wandsworth. We're out in Southside Centre, on the first floor. And I mean, there's a lot of reasons why I got into doing what I do. I suffered with a neck issue when I was about 16.
Mm-hmm.
I was involved in quite a bad rugby tackle. Oddly enough, the physios that I did go to didn't do the best work. So I said to myself, there needs to be a better way to do this. And how can I stop what happened to me happening to other people?
I think that's a really common story, because I had so many injuries myself, and I felt so lost in my own body.
Yeah.
That when I started to reverse that, I felt I felt compelled that other people didn't need to live in pain.
Yeah.
And there was a better path.
Yeah.
So have you solved that issue now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, solved is a bit of a strong word. I've learned how to manage it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've worked out techniques and ways and tricks around
Okay.
what I have. ultimately the reason why I actually got into physio, and it's the same reason why I think a lot of medical professionals get into their job, is the service of others.
Yeah.
So for me to do a desk-bound job, you mentioned media and corporate, no, it's not for me.
Yeah.
I don't like doing a desk-bound job. I like
Yeah.
to be active. I like to be on my feet, engage with people all the time.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of job satisfaction in taking someone where they are, pain, dysfunction,
Yeah.
and getting them back onto the CrossFit floor, onto the floor, your floor, that.
Back to their kind of active life.
Back to their active life. And for me, the best client that I can get is one I never see again.
Yeah.
A terrible business model, I know, but if you do your work well, and what I believe is if you do your work well and you've done it successfully, they should.
Well, the thing is, you know, and it's often where we come in. Of course, it's lovely to work with people long term because there is a process of change when it comes to personal training in a way that you know, if you want to do a really dramatic body transformation, it's not going to happen in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
It's something that will happen over time, and often what we do is we coach. But ultimately, you want to get someone to the point where they don't need you. A lot of our clients who've been with us a longer time, they just enjoy working with us, which is a great compliment.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we have had people who just feel like, yeah, I can do this myself. But getting to that stage is not always easy, is it?
No.
And a lot of people that I see, and no doubt you see, have lived with movement dysfunction, joint injuries, muscle issues, you name it, for a very long time.
Yes.
And it's almost become part of them.
Yes.
And separating themselves from the injury is really, really difficult.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I suppose what I wanted to get into is that when we started working with people, we're on a path. We want to have a path to success. We're going to start working on the fundamentals, getting diet right, starting to work on teaching them the skills of moving well and lifting weights. But there will come a point where, maybe that's enough. For a lot of people, you know, if you're sat at a desk all day, just moving is just going to be massive.
Amen. Yeah.
And as long as you scale things correctly, that may be enough. But there are times when I can't, you know, I know the limitations of my skill set.
Yep.
And that means we can't solve the problem.
Yeah.
And that's when I would approach you. Do you typically see people before things go wrong, or do you see things once they've gone wrong? I mean, are you part of the... are you like very much the last resort?
So, both.
Both, yeah.
I would say more work is done towards once people have the injury, then they come and see us.
Okay.
Or see myself. So I'm doing a lot of catching up work, for want of a better phrase. So they get the injury, then they come through and see me.
Okay.
We're typically not the last resort.
Yeah.
The last resort, unfortunately, is surgery at times, if it's applicable.
Yeah.
Otherwise, refer out to another therapist.
I suppose you're seeing people post-surgery as well.
Yeah. So that's where. So typically, I try and do as much prevention work as I can because prevention is always better than cure.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, or 10 times out of 10. But typically, my average clientele went to the gym, felt my back go, I can't.
So is that the kind of things that you're seeing? Because obviously, I work with an active population. I mean, the stats show that some 15-20% of people actually have a gym membership. So, you know, if you're already active, then you're in the 1% of people or 20% of people who actually have gym memberships. So, is that who's approaching you? Someone who's already been active, but they've kind of overstepped the mark, or they've, you know, either ego or an accident or sporting thing. That's who you're seeing? Yeah. So it's not necessarily someone who's just been sedentary and it...
Again, both.
Both.
So sedentary people typically will then start exercising and they're not guided.
Okay.
They're either not guided properly or they try and self-guide and they don't really know kind of which pathway to go down. Okay. And then something goes wrong. So they either ego lift or they don't have the correct running shoes and then they get knee and back and issues and things like that. So but a lot of my clients at the moment are gym goers, highly active people, 5, 6, 7 times a week.
Really?
And something goes wrong.
Like an overuse injury or something?
Like an overuse injury. I'd say probably 90% of my work is overuse injuries.
So that tends to be muscle or joint or?
Typically both.
Both, yeah.
brain will always try and prioritize and protect joints with muscles.
Yeah.
So typically it's the joints that are just, they can't take it anymore.
So you're saying that the brain will protect the joint at the expense of the muscle?
Yeah.
Right.
The brain will use the muscles to protect the joints.
Use the muscles to protect the joints. So in what way? Will it just stiffen up or?
Lock it up, say protect, lock down, don't move anymore, cause pain, and what I need to then try and guide is release the muscle tension, tell the joint that it's okay, and then we can start re-educating movement patterns, safe movement patterns.
Because a lot of the time, we can kind of get it. I mean, like I say, when I look working with a client, very much there's a couple of things at play. The first thing is a relationship. So I know them. So I know when they walk through the door, they've had a hard day. Sometimes told me they've had a hard day, or I can see that they've had a hard day. And so you adapt to that level of energy that someone brings. The second thing you're doing is actually seeing how they move. So there's archetypes. You know, if you're wanting to back squat, then you're looking at position of the bar. You're looking at how they're where it's resting on the shoulders, the mobility of the wrists. You're looking at how they squat and how their knee bends and how their hip hip flexion and things like that. So you're thinking, right, that looks like a good position. That person looks confident with it. But sometimes client can't quite explain what's wrong with them.
Yep.
And so they're saying like something hurts.
Yep.
And we often work with very untrained people.
Yep.
And so the distinction between pain and discomfort is blurred.
Yes.
Because training is uncomfortable when it's done properly. Like when it's done at a decent level and you're super consistent, you're sticking weight on your back or you're swinging a kettlebell, it's uncomfortable.
Yes.
But knowing when discomfort turns into pain is often a blurry line. So when clients say, oh, my back hurts or my shoulder, something's wrong with my shoulder, it's difficult to have a diagnosis other than saying, well, we reduce load, tighten up your technique, and often these things persist and persist. So that would be a good time for me to refer out to you and say, look, okay, we don't really know what's happening here. This is not going away with the tweaks we're making in the sessions.
Yeah.
What do you then go through when you've got this kind of slightly
vague
kind of
history.
like, I've got pain?
Sure.
Yeah.
So we try and drill down as much as we can into what is actually causing the pain. Is it a joint that has locked itself up?
Right.
And if it is a joint that's locked itself up, why did it lock itself up? So take an example for the knee. If you've got any issues at the pelvis, so glute med, glute max isn't firing well, increases Q angle or Q forces down into the knees and locks the knees up.
Okay.
So yes, we would typically start and address locally, but we always want to try and find the cause. So is it a muscle imbalance?
Yeah.
Is your glute med underactive? Is
Yeah.
it overactive? Are your adductors overactive or underactive? Where is the dysfunction occurring?
So you're a bit of a Sherlock Holmes. You've got to start doing that. And do you have like a screen, or you just have a process that you kind of go through?
So we've got a normal kind of typical screening of any surgeries, any history of it. Have you experienced this before? And then we kind of delve into screening for what we call red flags. So red flags is basically what indicates that you may need further investigation. So do you have pins and needles? Do you have loss of sensation? Is there actual loss of muscle power?
Yeah.
From a neural aspect.
And you'll get like feedback from certain movements you're doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I typically do a very kind of functional movement. So, can you do a one-legged squat? Can you do a overhead squat? And when you're doing an overhead squat, what is your pelvis doing? What are your knees doing? What are your ankles doing? Yeah. What is your thoracic extension like? Yeah. Everything that you kind of see, we watch as well.
But one of the challenges, like just if someone says, I want to build more muscle's pretty easy to build. Yeah. Relatively speaking. It's not to say that a body transformation is easy, but once you start putting progressive overload, you say you choose 5 or 6 exercises, you start light, get heavy, muscle's easy to build. But as you said earlier, you don't want to spend ages with someone. So how long is the average kind of process with a client? Because becoming more mobile, undoing thoracic stiffness, opening up the hips is not an easy thing, is it? No. So when someone starts with you, what should they expect and where are they going
Sure.
before they come back to me, say, for
Yeah.
example?
So, I mean, I would love to say one session, but nothing can ever be done in one session.
No,
right?
no, without
So
that.
I typically aim for 3 to 4 sessions,
Really? Okay.
spaced at about 2 sessions within a week, depending on. There's a lot of factors depending on your level of pain, type of pain, those type of factors. So how bad is your pain? The more acute you are, the longer time we have to spend settling that pain.
So your main goal initially is just to get rid of pain.
Pain
Okay.
and restore movement.
And restore movement.
So those, and simple movement. Not can you deadlift 80 kgs?
Yeah.
It's can you squat down to pick something up from the floor?
Without pain.
So, without pain.
Yeah.
So those are our first 2 goals, is pain and then movement, and then we start strengthening. Now that strengthening is where there's quite a lot of grey area.
Right, okay.
Because there comes a point where they're doing our exercises really well and they now need to step up, and that's when we refer to you. And that's typically where we'd start to say, hey, look, you want to get back into running, go for 6 sessions or 6 weeks with Paul.
Yeah.
He's a great personal trainer.
Yeah.
You know, something like that.
So once you've got someone moving with a little bit of freedom, they then just have to make sure that they have a process to not just injure themselves again. Because, I mean, there's plenty of stories about people having heart surgery and the next day lighting up a pack of fags.
Yeah.
You know, so you can quite easily go back. I mean,
very quickly.
A lot of people you see, or a lot of people I've worked with, historically have just gone through the same cycle of zero exercise, intense exercise, injury, 0 exercise, maybe rehabbed it, then back to full pelt, then injured themselves again, and constantly doing this for years and years and years, and it's just kind of what they do.
Yep.
So you can send them out the door, hop, skipping and jumping, they just start running again in the same way, they go back and lift the same weights they were doing before with full technique. Yeah.
And without quoting the Lion King, the circle of life.
Yeah.
You know, the circle just sits and repeats itself. So
it's one of the challenges, I suppose. I mean, the same with personal training. It's quite easy. Like we offer shorter term programs to start people with, but often people come in with a mindset, a challenge mindset.
Sure.
And then they finish, and then they just go back to what they were doing before once they've done the challenge.
Sure.
How do you educate people on continuing this? I mean, what can be done? So you get people out of pain.
Sure.
Oh, I feel great. But what has to be taught? What kind of conversations have to be had so that you don't see them again? You know.
Yeah. Well, the big one is to educate someone on why the dysfunction occurred.
Right.
So what led to the pain in the first place?
Okay.
Was it your technique with the deadlift?
Yeah.
Was it just the fact that you went from 1 week 60 kg deadlift to 120 kg deadlift?
Okay. Yeah.
And you need the biggest thing is education and making someone aware.
Yeah.
Why what occurred.
But that's all down to conversations, isn't it?
That's all down to conversations, and that's where we get someone like yourself involved, or other personal trainers, where we say, look, this is what's happened, and then there needs to be that relationship where we send you the referral letter and we give you the history, so that you can then dial up and monitor that process going forward. A lot of it is just, this is why it happened, this is what you need to do, accept or reject it.
Well, when we take someone who's had an injury, we've got a couple of people with, either a history of very severe injuries, or people who've just kind of come out the other side of a surgery or something. Is always a conversation on the day. It's like, do you think you could use that weight, or let's give you this adaptation? Like today, we had someone doing back squats. Everyone else was doing back squats, but they just couldn't get under the bar because of a shoulder surgery.
Sure.
They couldn't get into that position. They were doing something with kettlebells, holding them in the front.
Fine.
Light kettlebells, and they had a great session. They worked hard.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it's, the brain responds to confidence, doesn't it?
Yes.
In the joint, and it creates tension when it's not confident.
Yes.
So what is the process? I mean, it's a massive subject, isn't it? But but I mean, how do you build localized confidence in a joint?
You test it.
You test it.
So I can't squat. If I squat, my knee hurts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's a general thing. It's like, my knee hurts.
My knee hurts.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's work out, why is your knee hurting? Okay. your pelvis is out of alignment. Correct the pelvis. Okay, my knee hurts less.
Yeah.
Okay, let's address a local tissue. Let's do a VMO release. Let's needle the quads. Let's look at the calf extensibility. That all feels great. Do a squat again. I feel fine.
Yeah.
Great. Load the squat. Oh, how much should I load by? 60 kilos? No. Start with the bar.
Yeah.
You know, start with these little changes and incrementally build up.
I suppose that's setting the expectations, isn't it?
Yes.
I think that's important, because what we need to, when I do as a trainer, as I hope I do anyway, is set expectations.
Yes.
And you're very much a white belt when you start again. You know, you have to have that white belt mentality.
Yep.
And once you've had an injury,
Yep.
you can't go back full pelt, can you?
No. You need to give that body time and your body time to get back to where it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We say make haste slowly.
Make haste slowly.
You know. I mean, what are you seeing as the main? So you talked about it being muscle and joint issues, but what are you typically working with people on? What are the main areas of issues that you're seeing, and also the ones that have the best outcomes?
So typically I see a lot of low back pain, neck pain, headaches, calf issues, knee issues. Headaches, yeah.
Okay.
Surprisingly, we have actually quite an influential role in headaches, although headaches in itself is a massive topic.
Yeah.
But that we'll get into a little bit later, what another time.
Yeah.
The best outcomes that I find that I have, obviously lower back pain, if you address the facet joints and the muscle imbalances properly.
Yeah.
Lower back's rehab beautifully.
Yeah.
Ankles, bit of a tricky one because there's so much that impacts on the ankle.
Well, the ankle is often an issue that we come across really frequently.
Yeah.
Maybe it's shoe choice, maybe it's just historic, maybe injuries, you know.
Yeah.
So when people squat, trying to keep the heels down, trying to get a good position with their knees and their legs becomes very, very tricky because they've got such restricted ankle mobility.
And there's so much that can lead to that restriction.
Yeah.
You know, there's a problem with the knee, is there a problem with the hip, is there even a problem as far up as the lower back?
Yeah.
You know, all of that can impact onto the ankle. But if you get an ankle and you can address all of those components, beautiful rehab.
Really?
Yeah.
Because often one of the big challenges, and it's actually what I found in my own journey, was that I sold one thing, and then another, I had to solve something else.
Yeah.
You know.
And it's just further and further up the chain.
Particularly the more you want to perform.
Yes.
Because once you're out of pain, a lot of people are happy being just out of pain.
Sure.
But then when you try and lay a performance on it,
Sure.
you sort the ankles out, but then you realise there's a hip problem, or you realise the thoracic spine problem, or
Sure.
everything's a problem.
Everything, the whole tip to toe is a problem.
Yeah, and the more you push yourself athletically, the more the finer details happen.
Sure.
Is it easy for... So when do you know when, okay, that's enough with the client? Because it could be quite easy for you to go, oh, we could do this, we could do that, I could work on this. And
I think there's very much dependence on the client themselves.
Yeah.
So when they feel they're 100%, then we back away. Say, look, and they often, I mean, the guys who perform at athletic level, they know their issues.
Mm-hmm.
They say, you know, I've got this issue and that issue, but this is flared up.
Yeah.
You know? We start backing away the moment we can see objective markers that start doing really well. So your ankles are no longer unstable, your back is no longer tweaking, you've got full movement in your back.
Right.
Your aggravating factors have substantially dropped.
Yeah.
Go.
Okay. That we find, particularly when it comes to nutrition, is we can give our clients the best nutrition program that we think we can kind of get out there. We can give people really well thought out path to success with their diet. You know, pictures on the wall will show that when someone follows our system, they can see the changes that they want. It's getting them to do it.
Yeah.
And there are a variety of reasons why people struggle: skill set, priorities, emotion, stress. There's loads of reasons which get in the way, some of which are valid, some of which are excuses.
Yeah.
Part of my job is to say, well, are you being truthful to yourself, or are you, or is that a legitimate thing that you just need to overcome? One of the big things I know when clients come up to me and say, Paul, I've got a shoulder thing, and I think, okay, yeah, there's a simple solution to that. You do X, Y, Z, and then don't do it. That must be a common thing for you. Yep. You see someone, you've given them some homework, 2 weeks later you see them again. Have you done it? No. is that common? Is there ways around it?
So it is quite common. And again, there's a multitude of factors. I mean, we'll see them on the Friday and they'll say, look, this weekend I went to Paris and I was enjoying the weekend with my spouse, a significant other.
Yeah.
Great. All we can really do, and it's this phrase that I've used with a lot of clients, is I can take the deer to the water, I can't make a drink.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you found that as well. You
Yeah.
can give them all of that information.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like, as much as what you're responsible for their health, they're responsible for their health as
Yeah.
well. And you need to match those two. So sometimes it is a tough conversation
Yeah.
that you need to have, and
Yeah.
you need to have those candid conversations with people.
Yeah.
Most of the time for me, I just say, look, this is where you come from. This is why we're doing what you're doing. Please, I implore you to follow this regime.
So if you've got someone who's actually following it, but they're not seeing any changes, how do you approach that? Is there a referral thing for you guys?
So if, let's say, what we're doing for the lower back, we're getting some results, we're not getting the results we need.
Mm-hmm.
Typically what I'll do then is I'll go back and I'll reassess. So was something overlooked? Was there a component that didn't come up initially in the screening or initially in the question that's now come up later?
Okay.
So I always retrace my steps and I look back. I just want to double check.
Okay.
The second thing that I then do is I then ask a colleague. So
so you've got a team of people.
We've got a team of people.
Yeah.
We've got 3 at the Wandsworth branch, and then I think 3 or 4 at the Chiswick branch.
Okay. So there's that pool of talent there.
There's that pool.
And you all have their own specializations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I'll ask someone, hey, have a look at this guy or this lady.
Yeah.
This is what I found. What do you think?
Yeah.
Then he and I will chat about it, and it could come up that they picked up something that I missed, and vice versa, I picked up something that they missed.
Yeah.
And then we address that.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, that solves the problem. If you're that 1 out of 10 person will say, you know what, we know this consultant who specializes in this, go have a chat with them.
Yeah.
Because I now need MRI imaging, or I need ultrasound imaging, or I need some sort of investigation as to what is actually occurring. So we've got contacts within the kind of consulting field that we will refer out to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the key thing, really. I mean, I think it's so easy to keep everything in house, and it's knowing the particularly for us, it's knowing the distinction between a client that's not following. There's clients that could optimize the way they train, and then they don't need to keep going, because sometimes we work with people and they're constantly going to see people to help them, like whether it's massage therapists or chiropractors or osteos, and that never seems to resolve.
Yeah.
And sometimes we know it's because they're not implementing the basics, and other times we can rack our brains, we just don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating for the client as well, because they sometimes live with pain, and when there's part of your brain that's always switched on and it's dealing with pain, I mean, I've been there, I'm sure you've been there with your neck, it can be very mentally draining.
Yep.
Very mentally draining, and they're looking for answers, and people can get desperate, and people can turn to things that aren't effective as well.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I'm just in pain all the time.
Yeah.
But I think, is it rare that there are cases that can't have some kind of solution?
It is rare. Most of the time, you've just got to keep digging.
Got to keep digging.
And you've got to be that persistent. I've cleared this, I've checked this, I've checked this.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is literally those random instances where it's 1% of the population has this issue.
Yeah.
And only if you send them to that consultant can they pick up on that issue.
Right.
Those are the outliers.
Yeah.
90% of my work, or 90% of my clients, I'd even say 95%, 98%, resolve with dedication to the program, good physio from our team, follow up with you. If they follow that pathway, 98 to 99% resolve.
I think that's the key thing, because one of the reasons they would work with you, or they would work with us, or they'd work with someone who has a track record, is that for 99% of people, following the basics works.
Yes.
Going through a methodology to exclude some things and double check, you're gonna be able to come up with a solution.
Sure.
And then we just need the client to do walk the path.
Yeah.
A lot of my time is spent not just building the path has been built, it is getting people to apply it to their life. So whether we work with someone who wants to lose weight or wants to gain weight, or someone who has very high stress levels, or someone who has is going through perimenopause or menopause, we don't have an expertise in perimenopause or menopause, but we do have a very high level of familiarity with it.
Yep.
We know that we've got to check off some of the basics first.
Yep.
And then once we've got the basics down, we can then make an assessment. Look, drinking more water, getting more sleep, being in a calorie deficit, or eating more protein and exercising twice a week, that's not working.
Yeah. What else can we do?
What else can we do? And there are times when you need medication for thyroid issues, you need medication for things, and that's really outside us. We will sit back and go, someone else needs to deal with this.
Yeah. Or alternatively, you need a meditation technique.
Yeah.
You know, something along those lines to help you manage with.
That's a good one. Yeah.
With the stress levels, you need correct diaphragmatic breathing with this and that and that. And I think that's where having this kind of multidisciplinary team of, you know, you guys, us, even psychologists, dietitians, consultants all on board, gives the client that pathway and that loop to be involved with, you know.
Without a doubt. I think as soon as our clients, because we typically will work with probably highly accomplished people, they're professional individuals, you know, whether they manage teams or sometimes they're retired or whatever, you know, they're intelligent individuals.
Yeah.
You know that you just have to get their attention on the problem.
Yeah.
And often pain is a big enough attention grabber sometimes, but other times...
It's enough motivation.
Yeah, people can live with pain.
Yep.
But as soon as you start getting to think and say, look, dedicate some time, just give me a couple of hours, do my rehab exercises, come to see me a few times, think about this, probably find things start to resolve themselves. Yeah. And it's through lack of attention.
Yeah, and it's that lack of consistency.
Yes, consistency.
Consistency is the key. A lot of the times, I mean, a common story we hear is, I've trained 5-6 times a week, I then stopped training for birth of my child. I had hectic deadlines at work, so for 3-4 months I didn't train. Yeah. Then when I went back to the level I was. Yeah. And it's that lack of consistently keeping your body strong and keeping your body healthy and being accountable that we just found. That's it. I mean, I think that's exactly it. I mean, that's why I start all my clients on twice a week training. Sure. Firstly, because I know they can fit that in. Yeah. If they can demonstrate that they can train 3 times a week, great. But they've got to prove that. You know, when we do the data, most people are training 1.8 times per week over the course of a year. So, you know, any more than that, people forget about recovery. And so if you're breaking the body down doing a sport, well, how do you recover? How do you build the muscle back? And often it's through lack of taking downtime through sleep, downtime through reduced stress, downtime through those complementary therapies, meditation, yoga, things, eating well, that they end up pushing the limits, you know, like a volume on a mixing desk going into the red, and eventually you're in the red for too long. Yep. That's when you come on. Exactly. Get involved, that's when you come unstuck.
So I suppose that brings us to the end in a way. I mean, so if for example, I've got clients who need help, how's best to contact you, and what's the process they go through?
Best way to contact us, Google Physio Edge Wandsworth. All right, that'll link you straight into our website. On our website, you can then book online. Yep. You can also then pay for the sessions online.
And they request you?
And you'll see that my name is there. So it'll be practitioners tab. You'll see that there's a whole lot of practitioners.
Okay, great.
Myself, Coral, and Jill are at the Wandsworth branch. Chiswick branch, you've got Nick and Josephine. Okay. And Coral as well. So Coral works
both.
Works at both. The other way, you'll also see if you prefer a more, or you request more knowledge, or you want a more personal interaction, give us a call. Our front of house, Dominique, will happily assist. She has access to all of our diaries. Okay. And that's it.
That's it. Simple. Great.
That's it.
So, I mean, I definitely recommend you guys working with Nathan. Already given me some good tips for some stuff, which is really useful for me. Yeah. I kind of went through a list of my A to Zs, you know. So thanks for coming in. I really appreciate you kind of giving this background. It's fascinating for me, having come from an injury background and trying to give myself the physical freedom. Like you say, it's a very powerful motivator for me to pass on well-being to other people, and it's good to see that's for you. So thanks for coming in.
No, it's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for having me.
No worries.
Yeah.
There we go. And the battery lasted. Hey, let's double check. I bet the whole thing's... Yeah, and I pressed